Elena Ramirez was carrying a tray of cleared dishes toward the kitchen when she felt it cold. Shocking. A cascade of water pouring between her shoulder blades, soaking through her uniform and making her gasp so hard she nearly dropped everything she was holding. Laughter erupted behind her. "Oh my God, Elena, I'm so sorry." Brittany, the one with the perfect blonde ponytail and the waist of a pencil, pressed both hands over her mouth, but her eyes were laughing. Her whole body was laughing. "I tripped. You're just so wide. It's hard to get around you in this kitchen." Beside her, Jasmine, the tall black girl with the bone structure of a supermodel and the cruelty of someone who had never needed to try hard for anything, cackled into her collar. And then there was Aisha, Vanessa, and Chloe. A whole lineup of gorgeous manicured women who looked like they belonged on the cover of a magazine, not behind a restaurant counter. They all saw it. Not one of them said a word in Elena's defense. Elena stood there, water dripping off her, 27 years old and 240 pounds of quiet dignity that she was fighting very hard to hold on to right now. "It's fine," she said, "because what else do you say when 5 women are laughing at you, and the kitchen is full of witnesses who've suddenly found very important things to stare at on the floor?" She walked to the back, grabbed paper towels, and pressed them against her soaked uniform. Her reflection looked back at her from the silver surface of the refrigerator door. Dark skin, natural hair pinned back, full cheeks, full everything. And she squared her jaw at herself. "You need this job," she reminded herself. "Just get through the shift." But here's what Elena didn't know yet. She didn't know that in 48 hours, the owner of Voss Dining, a man she had exchanged exactly 12 words within 2 years of working there, was going to walk into her section, sit down at table 9, and change her life completely. She didn't know any of that yet. So, she just mopped up the water, straightened her apron, and went back to work. Let's talk about Elena for a second because you need to understand who she really is before the story goes any further. Elena Ramirez grew up in West Chicago with a grandmother who taught her that your size was never your limitation, only your excuse. She put herself through culinary school waitressing, then kept waitressing after graduation because the restaurant money was steady while she saved up to open her own place one day. She had a notebook full of recipes in her apartment, a business plan she revised every 3 months, and a dream she protected like something sacred. She was warm in the way that people who've had hard lives sometimes get, not naive, but genuinely kind. She remembered regulars' birthdays. She learned how customers took their coffee. She once stayed 45 minutes past her shift to sit with an elderly man whose wife had just been rushed to the hospital because he'd had nobody else to talk to. She was not a pushover. But she had learned slowly and painfully to pick her battles. And fighting 5 women who would make her remaining hours at work a living nightmare didn't always feel like a battle worth picking. So she endured. Now, Alexander Voss. He was 36, the kind of man who wore a watch that cost more than Elena's rent and somehow made it look understated. He'd inherited the restaurant from his father, but had tripled its revenue through obsessive attention to quality and a reputation for not tolerating mediocrity in any form. His employees were terrified of him, not because he was cruel, but because his standards were immovable. He had one soft spot and everybody knew it. His daughter. Sophia was 7 years old and had her father's serious eyes in her late mother's dimples. She spent occasional evenings at Voss Dining when Alexander had late meetings, sitting at the corner booth doing homework, drinking virgin lemonades. The kitchen staff adored her. She called them all by name. Elena adored her, too. She'd been slipping Sophia extra lemon cookies for a year and a half. "You make the best lemonade," Sophia told her one evening, 4 months back, swinging her legs under the booth. "The secret is a tiny bit of lavender syrup," Elena whispered like it was classified information. Sophia's eyes went huge. Don't tell Chef Bernard. Never. What Elena didn't know, what she had no way of knowing, was that Alexander had been standing 2 feet around the corner listening to that entire exchange. And that something about the way Elena talked to his daughter, like she was a real person worth taking seriously, had lodged itself somewhere deep in his chest and stayed there. The offer came on a Saturday morning. Elena was refilling coffee at table 3 when Alexander's assistant Ethan appeared at her elbow and said quietly, "Mr. Voss would like a word." His office. When you have a moment. She had many moments in which she worried. What had she done? Was she being fired? Had someone complained? She mentally ran through the last week of service like rewinding a tape, searching for errors. She knocked on his office door at the end of her shift. "Close the door," he said. He was standing at the window, his back to her, looking out at the city with his hands in his pockets. When he turned around, he looked. She searched for the word uncomfortable, which she had never seen on him before. "I have a business proposition," he said, "and I need you to hear the whole thing before you respond." Elena crossed her arms slowly. Okay. What came out of his mouth next hit her like a physical thing. His situation. He was being evaluated for the Voss Foundation's Board of Trustees, a position his father had held, a position that controlled charitable funding for children's hospitals and schools across 3 states. The outgoing board chair, a 70-year-old traditionalist named Reginald Thorne, had made it explicitly known that he favored candidates with what he called settled family lives. Alexander had been a single father for 4 years since his wife's accident. His chances of securing the position were strong on paper, weaker in Reginald's eyes. The board vote was in 6 months. "I need someone to attend events with me," Alexander said carefully. "Galas, the foundation's quarterly dinner, a few family occasions. Someone who can present as my partner convincingly enough that Reginald doesn't hold my single father status against the foundation's work." "A fake relationship," Elena said flatly. He didn't flinch. "A professional arrangement, 6 months. You'd continue your position here, but you'd also accompany me to approximately 8 to 10 engagements. In exchange, I will fund your restaurant." Elena went very still. "I've read your business plan," he said. "All 3 versions. Ethan found the copy you left in the break room 18 months ago, and I kept it." She didn't know whether to be mortified or stunned. She chose stunned for now and filed mortified away for later. "The location you've been eyeing on Maple Avenue, the startup costs, the first 6 months of operating expenses. I'll cover it all and I'll connect you with my father's supplier network, which will cut your wholesale costs by 30%. Her restaurant, her actual restaurant, the notebook full of recipes, revised business plan, dreamed about every night restaurant." "Why me?" she asked. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Because Sophia talks about you constantly. Because I've watched you work for 2 years and you have more integrity than anyone on my management team. And because I think you're someone I could actually spend 6 months beside without losing my mind." It wasn't romantic. It was precise and honest. And somehow that made it worse because she couldn't dismiss it. She thought about the notebook. The plan, the Maple Avenue location with the big front window where morning light would pour in. "No physical relationship," she said. "Understood. And if this falls apart for any reason, I still get enough to cover 6 months of startup costs." He blinked, clearly not having expected her to negotiate. "Agreed. Then yes," Elena said, "I'll do it." She walked out of his office, went to the break room, sat down, and pressed her hands flat against the table to stop them from shaking. The next day, Brittany found out. Nobody knows exactly how the news spread, whether Ethan mentioned something or whether someone on the administrative side talked, but by Monday morning, every waitress at Voss Dining knew that Elena Ramirez, size 18 Elena, quiet Elena, who nobody ever thought twice about, had somehow landed herself a deal to accompany Alexander Voss to 6 months of elite social events. The temperature in the staff room dropped about 20 degrees. "You're joking," Brittany said, looking at Elena like she'd just announced she was moving to the moon. "He picked you." Elena poured her coffee and said nothing. "No offense," Jasmine said in the tone of someone who meant every offense. "But what exactly are you bringing to a Voss Foundation gala? Like, what's the angle here?" "Maybe she's his before and after project," Aisha murmured. And the laughter that followed was sharp and quiet and designed to cut. Elena walked out of the break room. But that was only the beginning. Because what the other girls had underneath the cruelty was genuine wounded pride. They were beautiful. They were polished. They had spent years cultivating the kind of surface that men like Alexander Voss were supposed to notice. And he had looked right past all of them and chosen the fat girl with a notebook. They couldn't forgive her for that. So, the campaign began. It was small at first. Vanessa accidentally submitted a wrong order under Elena's employee number, and Elena had to spend 30 minutes with the manager, explaining a mistake she hadn't made. Brittany started timing her own tables to coincide with Elena's so she could swoop in and collect tips from customers Elena had already warmed up, smiling sweetly and claiming there had been a mix-up on sections. Then it escalated. One Tuesday, during a busy service, Elena reached for the serving tray she'd set on the counter and found it lightly greased on the handle. She felt it shift half a second before the disaster. Managed to catch the drinks, but not before stumbling hard into the counter edge. She said nothing. She set the tray down carefully. She finished her service. On Thursday, they replaced the sugar in her apron pocket with salt. A detail that only became apparent when a regular, Mr. Benson, called her over with a puzzled expression, and said his coffee tasted like the ocean. She apologized until she was pink in the face, comped his whole table, explained to the manager that there had been a mix-up with the condiments. She never said who'd done it. The manager looked at her strangely and said, "This is the third complaint in your section this month, Elena." "I know. I'm sorry. It won't happen again." Friday was the one that almost broke her as she was carrying a full dessert tray to a four-top near the window. The kind of elegant, precarious carry that required full concentration when she felt something catch her left foot. A deliberate hook of a heel inserted just precisely enough to catch her stride without looking intentional. Elena went down. Not completely. She managed to catch the corner of a table with one hand, which wrenched her shoulder, but saved the dishes, but the stumble was theatrical enough that half the dining room looked up. She stood there, shoulders screaming, face burning, while two nearby tables stared and Brittany called out from across the floor, her voice drenched in theatrical concern. "Oh, Elena, are you okay? You've got to be more careful, honey. Honey." Elena set the tray down. She straightened her uniform. She smiled at the four-top and said, "I am so sorry about that. Can I get anyone anything else while I'm here?" She would not cry at work. She had made herself that promise years ago, and she had kept it every single time. In the break room later, Jasmine leaned against the lockers and said conversationally like she was discussing the weather, "You know what I don't get? He has his pick. Literally anyone. And he's walking into charity events with someone who looks like a pause, a deliberate up and down look. That, maybe he feels sorry for her," Chloe offered. "That's literally the only explanation," Brittany agreed. Elena was at her locker, her back to all of them, and she kept her face perfectly neutral as she gathered her things. "They don't get to have this," she told herself. "This is mine. He is a business arrangement, and my restaurant is real. And none of their opinions exist inside my notebook." She walked home. She made herself dinner. She revised 3 pages of her business plan. She told Alexander none of it. The first event was a foundation preview dinner, and Elena wore a burgundy dress she'd found at a consignment shop and altered herself. Taken in at the waist, let out at the hips, tailored until it fit her body like it had been made for her specifically. She looked beautiful. She knew it, and more importantly, she felt it. Alexander picked her up at 7 o'clock. When she opened the door, he looked at her for a long moment and said, "You look remarkable." Not nice, not good, remarkable. She tucked that word away somewhere private. The event was full of people who looked at her with the particular polished curiosity of the wealthy encountering something unexpected. Alexander kept a hand at the small of her back, which she had told herself would feel transactional, and didn't quite. He introduced her to people without apology or over-explanation. He refilled her water glass before she noticed it was empty. He made her laugh twice, actually laugh, surprised out of it, with observations murmured close to her ear about the room's more eccentric guests. Reginald Thorne shook her hand with both of his and said, "Alexander speaks very highly of you." "He's generous," Elena said. "No," Reginald said with a small, shrewd smile. "He really isn't. That's what makes it notable." In the car on the way home, Elena looked out the window and tried to put her finger on what felt different about tonight. She decided it was simply that nobody had looked at her with pity. Nobody had evaluated her size as a primary data point. For 4 hours, she had simply been a person in a room. She realized she had almost forgotten what that felt like. Back at Voss Dining, the weeks ground on. The pranks continued like a slow drip of poison. Sugar-salt switches, tables reassigned at the last minute, so she'd have to rush. Her locker door jammed, probably not an accident given the laughing she heard from around the corner when she spent 10 minutes fighting it open. Brittany telling a new hostess that Elena had a hygiene problem, which Elena only found out about because the hostess was kind enough after 2 weeks of strange distance to quietly tell her what she'd heard. Elena went home that night and sat at her kitchen table for a very long time. She wanted to tell someone. She wanted to walk into Alexander's office and lay out the whole thing. Every small cruelty, every calculated stumble, every murmured comparison that was designed to land just hard enough to sting. But she didn't, because if she reported it, it would become his problem. And the arrangement between them was already complicated enough because she wasn't sure what he would do. And she couldn't afford drama that might unravel the only real shot at her dream she'd ever been given. And because if she was honest with herself, some stubborn private part of her wanted to get through it on her own, wanted to prove, at least to herself, that she could. What she didn't account for was Sophia. Sophia had started spending more Friday evenings at the restaurant, perched in her corner booth with her homework and her lavender lemonade. Elena always checked on her. It had become habit, and somewhere in the last 2 months, their 15-minute check-ins had stretched into an hour of conversation about school, about books, about the animals Sophia wished she could have, and the pets policy in their apartment building that stood in the way. "My dad says you're his friend," Sophia said one Friday, coloring the margins of her notebook. "I hope so," Elena said, sliding into the seat across from her. "He doesn't have very many real ones." Sophia looked up. "He said, you're the first person in a long time who talks to him like a regular person." Elena didn't know what to do with that. "He also said, you make the best lemonade in the city," Sophia added very seriously, "which I already knew, and I told him first." Elena laughed despite herself. "You're very well informed. I pay attention." Sophia went back to her coloring. "That's what my mom used to say. She said, the people who pay attention are the ones who understand things." Elena was quiet for a moment, then carefully. "She sounds like she was very smart." "Yeah," Sophia said softly. "She was." That night, driving home, Elena realized something had happened without her permission. She had started to care about this child. Not as a professional courtesy, not as a charming perk of a complicated arrangement. She had started to care about Sophia the way you care about someone you choose. The way her grandmother had always said, the best love works. She gripped her steering wheel and told herself sternly that 6 months was a fixed point in time and she needed to keep her expectations calibrated accordingly. She was not successful. It was a Wednesday, 4 months in, when everything came apart in the best possible way. Elena had just come out of the walk-in cooler when she heard Brittany's voice from the prep station, loud, not bothering to lower it. The way people speak when they've decided they don't care who hears. I just don't understand what the pitch is. Like, is it a charity thing? Does he take her to these events and feel good about himself for being inclusive? She probably guilt-tripped him somehow, Jasmine said. Made him feel bad about something. That's how women like that operate. Women like what? Aisha asked, though she already knew, was already smiling. You know, a pause. Fat, unfortunate. The whole Jasmine waved a hand in the general direction of where Elena had been standing moments before. She probably cried in his office. Men like that can't handle a crying woman. Elena came around the corner with a rack of clean glasses and set them down on the counter. The women went quiet for exactly 1 second, the guilty second. And then Brittany tilted her chin up and didn't look away. We were just talking, she said lightly. I know, Elena said. She started stacking glasses. You know, Elena, honestly, Brittany continued, I don't have anything against you. I just think whatever you think is happening between you and Mr. Voss is probably not what's actually happening. I think you're reading into a professional arrangement, and I'd hate for you to embarrass yourself. Elena stacked another glass. He's going to go back to dating women who fit his world, Jasmine said with the particular gentleness of someone twisting a knife slowly. And you're going to be back on the floor. Just the way things are. 6 sizes smaller wouldn't hurt either, Chloe murmured, and the laugh that followed was quiet and vicious. Elena opened her mouth, and that's when they heard it. The particular sound of expensive shoes on hardwood, moving fast. Alexander Voss rounded the corner from the dining room entrance, his jacket still on, his phone still in his hand, and he stopped. The kitchen went very, very quiet. He had come in the back way because his usual parking was blocked. He had been in the building for less than 90 seconds, and he had heard enough. His eyes went from Brittany to Jasmine to Chloe to Aisha to Vanessa, moving across each face with an expression that wasn't anger exactly. It was something colder than anger, more deliberate. Then he looked at Elena just for a moment. Something moved across his face that she couldn't name. Mr. Voss, Brittany said with the instant composure of someone who has practiced charm as a survival skill. I heard what you were just doing. His voice was completely even. That was somehow worse than shouting. He turned back to Elena and he said not loudly but clearly enough for everyone in that kitchen to hear every word. You have been working in this restaurant for 2 years. In that time and you have had the highest customer retention rate on the floor. You have resolved more service complaints without management escalation than any other staff member. You have personally been requested by name by 11 regular customers. He paused. You are one of the most competent, perceptive, and frankly decent people I have ever had the privilege of employing. And I have allowed a culture to exist in this building that apparently treats you like an inconvenience to be tolerated. Nobody moved. That ends today, he said. Then he looked at Brittany, at Jasmine, at each of them in turn. Effective immediately. Your employment at Voss Dining is terminated. All of you. Ethan will process your final paychecks. I'd like you to collect your personal belongings and leave. The silence that followed was absolute. You can't, Brittany started. I can, he said. Just that. 2 words. No room in them for negotiation. He turned to Elena and something in his expression shifted. The CEO sharpened into something more private, more real. Can we talk? He said. When you're ready. She found him in his office 20 minutes later. He was standing at the window again. That window, the city below. And he turned when she came in, and she had the sudden, disorienting sense that the conversation they were about to have wasn't one she'd prepared for. How long? He asked. She knew what he was asking. Ah, why didn't you tell me? Elena sat down without being invited. Because suddenly her legs felt uncertain. Because it would have been your problem and I didn't want to owe you any more than I already do. Something crossed his face. You don't owe me anything. Alexander. She said his name carefully, the first time she'd used it without the Mr. We have an arrangement. I didn't want to complicate it. He was quiet for a moment. Then he crossed the room and sat down across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. And this was different suddenly from every other version of him she'd seen. The composed restaurant owner, the polished foundation candidate, the careful co-conspirator in a professional performance. This was something simpler. I need to tell you something, he said. She waited. The foundation vote was 3 weeks ago. Elena blinked. What? Reginald moved the timeline up. There was a scheduling conflict with the board chair election. The vote happened. He held her gaze. I was approved 2 weeks ago. She processed this. Then the arrangement is technically concluded. Yes. He didn't look away. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you and whether telling you meant he started again. Whether it would change things between us. Elena's heart was doing something inconvenient. Change them how? She asked carefully. Sophia asked me last week if you were going to keep coming to dinner. He said it simply without strategy. She said, and I'm quoting directly, Dad, she's the first person who talks to me like Mom used to, like what I say matters. Elena pressed her lips together. And I realized, he continued, that I've been using the arrangement as an excuse to spend time with someone I actually want to spend time with, and that when it ended, I was going to have to be honest about that. Or lose something real. The room was very quiet. I'm not a project, Elena said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. I'm not something you feel good about. If this is about, it's about the fact that you make me laugh. He said it plainly like it was simple. It's about the fact that you argued with me for 20 minutes at the Greyfield dinner about the proper acid balance in a vinaigrette and you were completely right. And it was the most interesting conversation I'd had in years. It's about the fact that my daughter, who has been quiet and careful and held together since she was 4 years old, laughs out loud with you. He reached across the desk, not grabbing, offering his hand palm up. I'm asking, he said, if you want to stay, not because of a contract, because I'm asking. Elena looked at his hand as she thought about the notebook in her apartment, all those pages of plans and recipes and carefully constructed futures. She thought about Sophia swinging her legs under the corner booth. She thought about the word remarkable tucked away in the private pocket of her memory. She put her hand in his. I'm going to hold you to that vinaigrette argument, she said. For the record, I was right. Something broke open in his face then. Not the composed restaurant owner, not the foundation candidate, just him. Something warm and relieved and a little undone. And he laughed. Actually laughed. The kind that surprised him. You were absolutely right, he said. 6 months later, the restaurant on Maple Avenue opened on a Tuesday morning in April when the light came through the front window exactly the way Elena had always imagined it would. Gold and generous, flooding the whole room. The sign above the door said Ramirez in clean, simple letters because her grandmother had always said your name was the first thing you gave people and you should give it without apology. Alexander was there with Sophia, who had insisted on being present for the opening and had made Elena a hand-drawn card that said, "To the best lemonade maker and second best friend I have. Dad is first, but only barely." Elena hugged Sophia for a long time. Over the girl's shoulder, she met Alexander's eyes. He mouthed something. She lip-read it, and her face did something she couldn't control. "I'm proud of you." The lunch rush that first day was chaotic and beautiful. And everything she had written in that notebook, her staff hired carefully, people she'd chosen herself, moved through the dining room with confidence. The menu was hers, built from years of revised recipes and her grandmother's margin notes. At the end of service, she stood in her own kitchen and let herself feel it. All of it, the years of enduring and saving and planning. The months that had somehow rearranged her life into something she hadn't known she was allowed to want. Alexander found her there, leaning against the prep counter, her apron still on. "Well," he said, "it's real," she said, a little stunned. "It's actually real." He crossed the kitchen, stopped in front of her, and this time there was no arrangement, no professional context, no script being followed. There was just him looking at her the way she had been carefully not noticing for months. "You know," he said quietly, "the first time I really saw you, not as an employee, but you. You were sitting across from my 7-year-old and taking her opinion on lavender syrup with complete seriousness." Elena smiled. "It's a legitimate culinary consideration." "It is." He was close now. "I've been a little gone on you since that moment." "A little," she said. "Very," he corrected significantly to a degree that made managing a professional arrangement somewhat complicated. She looked up at him. "For what it's worth," she said. "I noticed you refilled my water glass before it was empty at that first dinner, and I told myself it was just good hosting." "It wasn't." "I know." She held his gaze. "I know it wasn't." He kissed her in her own kitchen, in her own restaurant, on the best first day she'd ever had. And it felt like the ending of a very long, difficult chapter, and the very first sentence of something that had no expiration date, no clause, no professional arrangement governing its terms. Outside, through the big front window, the afternoon light poured in exactly the way she had always planned. Everything finally was hers. Some people spend their whole lives shrinking to fit spaces that were never built for them. Elena Ramirez did the harder thing. She built her own space, held her ground inside it, and waited for the world to catch up. It did. It always does for the ones who refused to disappear. That is Elena's story, a woman they counted out before she even had a chance to begin. If this one stayed with you, if you found yourself rooting for her from that very first icewater moment, then you already know what kind of stories we tell here. Hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you never miss one. And drop a comment right now. I want to know, what was the moment that got you? Was it when he walked in and heard everything? Or was it when he looked her in the eye and said she was remarkable before he fired every single one of them? Tell me below. I read every comment, every single one. And I will see you in the next one. But wait, let's dive a little deeper into Elena's backstory to really understand how she got to this point. Growing up in West Chicago wasn't easy. The neighborhood was tough, with streets that echoed with the sounds of distant sirens and the chatter of families trying to make ends meet. Elena's grandmother, Maria, was a force of nature, a woman who had immigrated from Mexico with nothing but determination and a few family recipes tucked into her suitcase. Maria raised Elena after her parents passed away in a car accident when she was just 5. From a young age, Elena learned the value of hard work in Maria's tiny kitchen, where the air was always thick with the scent of spices and fresh baked bread. "Your body is your temple, mija," Maria would say, kneading dough with strong hands. "It carries you through life. Don't let anyone make you feel small because of how much space you take up." You fill the room with your spirit, not your size. Those words stuck with Elena, becoming her armor against the world. As a teenager, Elena faced her share of bullying at school. Kids would whisper behind her back, make jokes about her weight, or exclude her from groups. But she found solace in cooking. After school, she'd experiment with recipes, blending her grandmother's traditional dishes with new flavors she discovered in library books. By the time she graduated high school, she knew her path: culinary school. But money was tight. Maria worked 2 jobs as a cleaner, and Elena pitched in by babysitting neighbors' kids. They scraped together enough for tuition, but Elena waitressed through her classes to cover living expenses. Those years were grueling, long nights studying recipes while her feet ached from shifts at local diners. She graduated with honors, but the job market for chefs was competitive, especially for someone without connections. So, she kept waitressing, saving every penny for her dream restaurant. Voss Dining was her longest gig yet, a upscale spot where the tips were good, but the environment was cutthroat. Now, let's talk more about Alexander Voss. He wasn't always the stoic, successful man everyone saw. Born into wealth, yes, but his childhood was marked by high expectations from his father, who built the Voss empire from a single-family diner. Alexander's mother died young, leaving him to navigate a world of boardrooms and business deals as a teen. He took over the restaurant at 25 after his father's sudden heart attack, turning it into a chain while expanding the family foundation. But personal life, that was a mess. His marriage to Sophia's mother, Isabella, was passionate but short-lived. Isabella was an artist, free-spirited, the opposite of Alexander's structured world. They met at a charity event, fell hard, had Sophia, but tragedy struck when Isabella died in a skiing accident. Alexander was left to raise Sophia alone, burying his grief in work. Sophia became his anchor, the one thing that softened his edges. He hired nannies, but always made time for her, even if it meant bringing her to the restaurant. That's where Elena first noticed her, a quiet girl with big eyes, sketching in her notebook while sipping lemonade. Expanding on that first interaction between Elena and Sophia, it wasn't just about lemonade. Over time, their conversations grew. One evening, Sophia was struggling with a math problem, and Elena sat down to help, explaining it with analogies from cooking. Think of fractions like dividing a pie. You want equal slices so everyone gets the same amount. Sophia's face lit up, and from then on, she asked Elena for help with homework. Elena shared stories from her own childhood, about baking with her grandmother, and Sophia opened up about missing her mom. These moments were genuine, unscripted, and they built a bond that Alexander couldn't ignore. He watched from afar, seeing how Elena treated Sophia with respect, not pity. It reminded him of Isabella's warmth, something he'd been missing. As the arrangement progressed, there were more events. Let's detail the second one, a gala at the City Museum. Elena was nervous, her hands sweating as she adjusted her emerald gown. Alexander noticed, squeezing her hand in the limo. "You've got this," he whispered. Inside, the room was glittering with chandeliers and champagne flutes. They mingled, Alexander introducing her as his partner. One guest, a snobby investor, made a backhanded comment about diversity hires, but Elena shot back with wit. Diversity isn't just a buzzword, it's what makes a menu exciting. Ever tried fusion cuisine? The man sputtered, and Alexander hid a smile. Later, they danced, a slow waltz where Elena felt seen, not judged. Alexander confessed, "I haven't danced like this in years." It was a crack in his armor, hinting at deeper feelings. Meanwhile, the bullying at work intensified. Beyond the pranks mentioned, there was the time Aisha, accidentally, spilled hot soup near Elena's feet, forcing her to jump back. Or when Vanessa tampered with Elena's schedule, making her miss a shift and face a warning. Elena documented it all in her journal, but kept silent, focusing on her dream. She spent evenings refining her business plan, researching suppliers, even sketching layouts for Ramirez. Her grandmother's voice echoed, "Patience, mija. Good things come to those who persevere." Sophia's role grew too. One Friday, she brought Elena a drawing, a colorful restaurant with Elena as the chef. "This is your place," Sophia said. "I drew it how you described." Elena teared up, hugging her. Alexander overheard, his heart swelling. That night, he questioned the arrangement. Was it still fake? He started seeking Elena out at work, asking about her day, sharing foundation stories. Their conversations deepened, from business to personal dreams. The confrontation scene was pivotal, but let's extend the aftermath. After firing the women, Alexander ensured they couldn't badmouth Elena. Non-disclosures were enforced. He promoted Elena temporarily to train new staff, giving her management experience. Their talks evolved. One evening, over coffee in his office, he shared about Isabella. "She was my light, but I was too focused on work. I don't want to make that mistake again." Elena opened up about her insecurities. "I've always been the big girl, overlooked. But with you, I feel valued." It was raw, building trust. Post-vote, their relationship blossomed naturally. Dates without pretense, picnics with Sophia, cooking sessions where Elena taught Alexander recipes. Sophia thrived, her laughter filling the home. Opening day at Ramirez was triumphant. The menu featured fusion dishes, Maria's enchiladas with modern twists. Guests raved, and Alexander proposed subtly that night, "Let's make this permanent, no contracts." Elena said yes, sealing it with a kiss. Elena's journey teaches resilience. From bullied waitress to empowered owner, she claimed her space. The world adjusted. If her story inspires, remember, build your space, hold your ground. It always catches up.